This question comes from Brussels, Belgium. Is the eponychium part of the proximal nail fold, or is the proximal nail fold part of the eponychium? I'm confused. Well, you're not alone. Nail anatomy terminology is very confusing. In fact, everyone seems to be confused about the names for the parts of the natural nail. Even doctors and scientists aren't sure which terms to use. It can be very difficult to know the facts. But the facts are what we need, or confusion will continue and we'll never have any clarity or agreement. My goal is to come up with some type of agreement on what we name the parts of the nail. Now, to reach that goal, of course, I've been working with many of the top educators to address this huge problem because it's plaguing our industry, and certainly getting the top educators and all educators involved is a solution. Now, to get the ball rolling, I created a drawing of a nail as a cross-section image, and I labeled it based on the strict interpretation of the medical definitions. I shared that first version with many of you, as well as top scientists, dermatologists, podiatrists, pathologists, and I asked them to poke holes in the diagram. I expected to hear a wide range of different opinions, but I was looking for hard facts and would accept nothing less. As a result, some researchers in dermatology who are expert in nails were instrumental in directing me to some conclusive evidence that finally settles this long-standing debate about the eponychium, cuticle, and the proximal nail fold. Here are the up-to-minute facts. The eponychium is defined in medical literature as the skin that covers the nail matrix and is responsible for development of cuticle tissue that adheres to the top of the nail plate. Excuse me. The proximal nail fold is defined as the fold of skin at the base of the nail plate. That much is clear. But where does the eponychium end and the proximal nail fold begin? Researchers have at last answered this question definitively by isolating and identifying the cuticle forming area. It was discovered that the eponychium is much thinner than suspected. In fact, it's surprisingly thin. It's approximately 0.004 inches thick. That's pretty thin. Rather amazingly, all nail cuticle tissue comes from this thin layer of cells. How can such a surprisingly thin layer make up all of that cuticle tissue? The prevailing thought is that the eponychium must be made of specialized type of cells called adult stem cells. This same type of stem cell is suspected to form the nail matrix and produce nail plate cells. Now, research is underway to verify that both the eponychium and the nail matrix are composed of adult stem cells. These stem cells behave like factories to produce cells that make up the nail plate and the cuticle. Now, these researchers also told me that sometimes the people think of the proximal nail fold, they shouldn't really think of it as a fold. Instead, it should be viewed as the skin that covers the matrix area, and the underneath side of that folded area is coated by a thin layer called the eponychium. Now, I think that paints a pretty good picture. In fact, one dermatologist told me, don't think of it as a fold, but think of it as a flap of skin that covers the matrix. I love that. So, in short, the eponychium creates and releases cuticle as a thin layer of dead tissue that adheres to and will ride on the nail plate as it emerges from underneath the proximal nail fold. Its function is to form a protective seal that prevents pathogens from entering to cause an infection of the matrix area. Now, the cuticle tissue should not be confused with the eponychium or the proximal nail fold. Each of these are very different.